So let's start. How much do you think a toilet seat costs the Pentagon in 2016? I'm talking about a plain, white, simple toilet seat, as opposed to the picture. So there is no alien abducted involved. The toilet seat doesn't have to be used as a weapon. It shouldn't survive a nuclear attack. Should be used for sitting on.
So what's the price tag on that?
What's the price tag on that?
The price tag that a usual toilet seat costs, I don't know, €50?
Now, the Pentagon paid $640 a piece.
So not the special Japanese kind, right?
No, simple toilet seat. And yeah, we are getting there soon. Yeah. So now we're talking. Yeah, we are getting there. So well, the journalists found this amount baffling, and they made the readers find it baffling too. Like, for 640 pounds was a bit below the average weekly wage of an American worker at that time. So it meant like you have your monthly salary, you buy 4 toilet seats, and you still have money to pay a Big Mac menu for your family. So it was baffling, and I bet the procurement manager at Pentagon found it baffling too. Well, she probably bought a toilet seat in Walmart. Price tag actually starts at $10 a piece. Well, you can have a special one, wooden with stainless fitting and all that stuff, for $15. So I would call, if I were a procurement manager at Pentagon, that's cognitive dissonance. But I can resolve that cognitive dissonance. So it's easy to sell toilet seat to household or to Epic Lab or something. But suppose you're running a restaurant. So you want to buy a toilet seat, but you want to make sure it's solid so your guests can sit on it, many guests in a row. And it's also germ-free as much as possible. And it's compliant, because we need compliance. And I haven't run a restaurant business myself, but I'm pretty sure toilet seats are regulated. So you can't get away with any toilet seat. So it's a lot of work for the producer, to check, is it solid enough? Okay, check germ-free, okay. Compliant, okay. A lot of work to do, so you may end up buying the same toilet seat with more, because you have to pay for the boxes and the ticks in the boxes. So imagine how long that checklist could be for the Pentagon. So it costs a lot to sell a toilet seat to the toilet seat to the Pentagon. $640 to be precise. So, well, we might think this is an unusual story, like disproportion, like more than 50 times more. But this is business as usual. And the bigger the business, the more it takes. So a sales cycle in a business-to-business case is 12 months sometimes. So suppose you have a startup, and it may take 12 months to get your product to the enterprise. And if you run a startup, you may have like 12 months funding to prove your product altogether. But this is what I call a cognitive dissonance. When I worked for a startup, we had a wonderful product, so we wanted to get it to the enterprise. Let's call it Wayne Enterprises. And our CEO knows someone in top management, not Bruce Wayne. And Wayne Enterprises is running on Amazon, AWS, They store their data in S3. Our startup is running on AWS, storing the data on S3. The same Amazon Cloud. Easy, a deal made in heaven, so to speak. And it turned out their Amazon Cloud is not the same as ours. Technically, they are the same, of course. So what's the underlying reason for that difference? Yeah, those boxes to check and to tick. And what I wanted to know, what's the underlying reason? So what's the real reason for that it takes so long? And I assume it has a answer. I assume you know. That they're stupid bureaucrats. Maybe, but no, I don't think that's the right answer. I think the actual answer is that they care for the customers and they want to protect them. And I know this in this circle it may sound strange, but this is I actually believe this, that they want to protect their customers. So let's look at the other side, at the startup side. So can any dumbass commit code to the code base and potentially leak customers' data and break everything? Like, is it possible that we have a database password like 1, 2, 3, 4? Is it possible? Or is it possible that we skip integration tests before release and, cross our fingers instead? So the Wayne Enterprises actually expects us to say no to all these questions and 100 of other questions. But this is still possible. So this is the other side of the coin. Now, this is a sad situation because on the one hand there is the startup who can't get to the enterprise. On the other hand, the enterprise misses on the startup's innovation. So there is a gap between these two worlds. What do we do when we see a gap? Well, we are trying to figure out how to build a bridge. And now I'm getting really excited here because I think Swarm could be the bridge. And I'm showing you how in a minute, and for that I will use this device. It resembles a presenter. So you think you know this device, but this is actually a new model, the first model of the Bruce Enterprises time machine. So if I push this button, it will emit a laser beam that punches a hole into the space-time continuum, and it can take us to 3 years from now, to 2022, to the next Orange Swarm Summit in Caracas. So let's see that. Manana. I'm too quick. So as you know, we just signed a contract with the 3 top tech companies. That means they approve that Swarm meets the requirements of the third-party core, what they require of third-party core providers. Which means Swarm 2.0 is compliant. This is good news. So it not only complies to that, but you can check this URL. I left off the BZZ part because it's obvious. So you can check all the acronyms, what we comply with here. And it's good news, fellow startuppers, because it simply means all you have to do is you add Swarm to your browser dependency tab, and you're good. You just create your dApp, upload it to the marketplace, and you're done. And if you want to know what data the company you want to work with exposes, you just check it here. Well, it's an old-fashioned website, I know. So you just check it here. And we will have a session, next session, a deep dive, how to do that. So how to write a dApp that replaces Google and Facebook. And that code is pretty simple, so we can do it in an hour. And I invite you to do that. But before that, I want to look back at our 3 years. So how did we get here? What happened? You probably know the MVP product, which is a short for minimal viable product. And we wanted to use a different model, which is the product cube. So this means we had a large problem space, and we had to find a minimal viable product in that space. It has 3 dimensions. One is the industries, the companies. The other is the data segments. And the 3rd dimension is compliance. So let's walk through all of them. But not all companies were born the same or equal. Some are pretty flexible, and there are some companies more conservative. So would you start using Swarm with a German insurance company? Well, if we can believe the cliche about them, that would be a suicide. This is why we picked 2 smallish companies, one Scandinavian and one American. One was a failure, but the other was a success. Now the data segments, like a company has many data segments processing. So take, for example, a bank. It has its core business. So you can never touch customer data or account balance or transaction history. That's their core business. It would take a decade to get into it. But if you walk up to the marketing department and you want to know about the customer segmentation data, it's not so sensible. What's the age of the cars in their fleet? Now that's even less sensitive data. So this is the data segment that we had to find the right place for us. And we had the idea to go for an internal survey. Like, do you like your colleague X? Or would you fancy vegetarian food in the canteen? These questions, an internal survey. And then we narrowed this area even more. So we had the idea of going with a meeting scheduler. A meeting scheduler, like Doodle for the enterprise, if you will. The compliance was a huge area. It was a rich source of inspiration, not only for us, but for big companies. Many were inspired to, when they noticed that you are browsing from the EU, they displayed under construction, sorry, page. So it was a good source of information, understandably, because like when a user asks you to delete all their data, how do you do that? You spent millions of dollars on securing that user data never gets lost, and now they want you to delete it. So you have to look for all the data in the databases, in caches, log files, whatever. And this was actually the area that we picked. A meeting scheduler, when there is a person who can say, okay, delete me. And they will be deleted, and all that data is lost, or it behaves. And Swoodle was the application that we wrote 3 years ago, that we offered to these small companies for meeting scheduling, where you could say that, okay, I remove myself from this meeting, and it behaved as if you never existed. And I luckily have a recording of a demo prototype of the time, and I want to show you the transcript in the command line. What happened then? It used a construct that was called feeds at the time. It may be better to understand for you. So Alice wants to schedule a meeting, give a description to it. Bob says his availability. Carol joins in, telling her availability is the same. So now you can query who the participants are, and not surprisingly, we have Alice, Bob, and Carol. And we can also query what's the best time for the meeting, what's the first day of the week, which is Wednesday. The bottleneck is Bob. So Bob updates his availability, and now we can query what's the best time, and it's Tuesday. But the interesting part comes now, when Bob wants to get removed from this whole conversation. What happens now? When we query the participants, we can't see Bob. Great. So what's the availability? We don't want to take into account that Bob is not free on Monday. What's the best time? It's Monday, because Bob doesn't matter. Now if you look, Aaron, something's wrong, I think, or maybe is it the space-time continuum, I'm afraid. Where was I? So I was talking about this gap between the enterprise and the startup, and how I think it could be Swarm that bridges the gap. And about this, I have many questions without an answer. I assume you have questions too.